Hey guys, this is Connor with Diet Doc Waterloo. Today I want to talk about the three most common misconceptions I hear regarding strength training for sport or for athletes. These come up all the time in the weight room, of course, whether it's the athlete themselves or the athlete's parent or you're just reading things online. There's people can misunderstand how strength training really applies to athletics and how athletes can benefit from it. And there are just some misconceptions that are absolutely untrue. So the biggest one that I see, and this applies beyond sport context, beyond the needs for athletes into the general population, is that strength training makes you tight, or it tightens up your muscles, it reduces your ability to get deeper into your range of motion. That's absolutely not true. Improper training can do that, and poor technique can do that. But maintaining a range of motion, building a range of motion, becoming more flexible, there are lots of components that go into that. But one of the primary components is, of course, the ability to stabilize your body. So you see this a lot with people that try to squat. They'll try to squat down to pick up something off the ground, or if it's an athlete that's never done a weighted squat before, they squat about halfway down, and then their knees start buckling in and their feet collapse and their backgrounds and all this other nonsense. And that's oftentimes not a mobility issue. Oftentimes that's a stability problem. They can't generate enough stability with their core, with their glutes, with their legs. So the body puts on the brakes by tightening the hamstrings, by tightening the low back, by stopping you from moving further into that movement so that you don't hurt yourself. So if you do weighted squats and deadlifts and things like that, and you push the range of motion with those movements, you just push it as far as you can control, but you're always pushing it further and further and further within control, with good technique, then you can actually build your range of motion. And much of the flexibility work that I do for myself is actually just weighted pause work. For hip mobility, I have a hip mobility squatting video that you can check out as well. But essentially, you can maintain or build ranges of motion using strength work if it's applied properly. Strength work does not make you tight on its own. The next biggest one is that moving slow in the weight room is somehow going to make athletes slow on the court or the field or whatever you might be competing in. And again, this is just not true. There's a misunderstanding of how specific training should be for sport. Different aspects of training feed into different aspects of performance. And using that logic, just taking it a little bit further, that would mean that you should only ever train at competition speeds all the time. And if you should only ever train at competition speeds, that would mean essentially only playing your sport or drilling things that you can drill as fast as you can do in the sport. If you're boxing, that means never using gloves heavier than the gloves you're going to compete in, which actually is necessary to use heavier gloves a lot of the time if you're sparring versus competing in the gym. You can't use light gloves all the time. But apply that to weight training. Training with heavy weights and moving slowly helps to build the musculature, helps you to build a stronger contraction, stronger control over that muscle, more stability, and all these things that might not necessarily make you a better shooter if you're playing basketball, or a better kicker in Muay Thai or in soccer or something like that directly, but they provide you with a bigger engine to use for those skills. So if you use the weight training to build your ability to create force and your ability to build muscle, and then you take that and you apply it to your sports skills and you move as fast as you can in your sports skills, you're not going to slow down at all. In fact, over time, if you can continue to repeat that and work on both those things constantly, you're just going to speed up and speed up and speed up. Conversely, if all you ever do is your sports skills or light training done extremely quickly, you have limited muscle gain from that. Eventually, you're just not going to see any further muscle gain probably. And then you can't build a bigger engine to supply your sports skills with more horsepower. It's just not going to happen. So eventually you're going to need something like that. And then as you get higher up in terms of skill and higher up in terms of performance, sometimes the need for that diminishes a little bit. The next and last biggest misconception that I see all the time with strength training is that training movements need to be exactly specific to the sport itself. And while there is some truth to that, specificity is huge for sport. It's probably the most important thing in training for sports. Some things need to not address the sports skills in particular. For example, if all you ever do is the exact sports movements, the exact movements you're going to do on the field and on the court, you'll get really good at those movements, super efficient, super powerful at them, and you'll probably be really successful. But eventually, like I alluded to just before there with the last point, you're going to hit a wall where it's hard to build further power, it's hard to build more efficiency. So it helps to add some more strength into that system with something completely unrelated, like swimming, or something completely unrelated like heavy squats or heavy deadlifts. It just gives you a better framework to build your skills on. And without that additional framework, there's really limited ways in order to build your skills further once you've achieved really close to perfect technique on a lot of your sport skills. So the role of what you do in the weight room, all the exercises you do in the weight room, some of them should mimic your sport a little bit, varying degrees of speed and strength and specificity involved there, but they don't have to look exactly like your sports movements. And it's better if some of them don't, because if everything you do works on the exact same plane, the exact same movements, exact same muscles all the time, then it's easy to get burnt out as well. And so it's harder to develop concurrently all the time. But if you're doing different skills, some that work you at this speed and in this particular movement pattern, and then some that work a completely different movement pattern, but still feeds into the strength you need for the other one, then you can work both at the same time. More volume on both of them, more development over time. So 3 biggest misconceptions I routinely see when talking about strength training for athletes.